Busted! Trinidad and Tobago police breaks up human trafficking ring. Weekend Business Report starts right now. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Kenil Gale. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Several Venezuelan girls were rescued this week after they were forced into prostitution in Trinidad and Tobago. We're getting an update on that in a bit, but right now let's get to some of the week's top stories from the BATV News Desk. The Bank of Jamaica sold another $30 million during a flash auction on Monday. This was the third time in as many weeks that the central bank has had to intervene in the foreign exchange market. Jamila Maitland tells us more.
The central bank says there's been a higher demand for the US dollars since the start of the year. The demand has caused a significant slippage in the exchange rate, with the local dollar depreciating by nearly 7% since the start of the year. Central Bank Governor Brian Winter says this is because there's a larger capital transaction in the market.
Bank of Jamaica intervened last Friday to sell $30 million to the market in a B-Fix-It flash operation. And the bank added another $30 million to the market in another flash operation this morning. We're aware that the concentration of large capital market transactions that we are seeing is by its nature temporary and will pass. But although the pressure on the foreign exchange market is therefore temporary and also will pass, we should understand that episodes like these do happen in markets from time to time, especially in markets like ours that are in the process of transformation.
The Jamaican dollar started the year selling for an average of $128.50 to the US, but ended trading on Friday at $137.06 to the US. The opposition PMP has said this rise is considerably high and fast, given that it's the height of the tourist season when the US dollar should have been widely available as tourists spend in the local economy. But the governor says there's no shortage in the US dollar.
Let me repeat, the flows of foreign exchange into the country have not slowed down. The effect on the foreign exchange market that we've been seeing is because there has been a higher demand for those US dollars as investors and businesses are demanding more. As I said, this is a good sign for the economy.
Meanwhile, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, Dr. Warren Smith, says Jamaicans shouldn't panic about the fluctuations in the Jamaican dollar. This as the price of the US dollar approached a record high earlier this week. However, he says the Bank of Jamaica might need to consider more timely interventions. BATV's Clelia Reynolds sat down for a wide-ranging interview with Dr. Smith following the CDB's annual press conference in Barbados Thursday morning.
We shouldn't really panic the way in which we do. We need to look at the reserves that exist in the central bank. And in particular, the central bank is now providing information as to what are, as they call it, earned reserves. In other words, these are not just foreign exchange reserves that come from borrowings, but they are earned reserves there. And that is that's a good indication of the transformation that's taking place in the economy.
However, he says the BOJ might need to respond more rapidly to dramatic increases in demand.
I understand the panic that sometimes develops, but I think that we need to give it some time. I think sometimes the central bank needs to respond perhaps a little bit more rapidly, but I'm not going to speak for my colleagues in the central bank. You know, they know their jobs very well. But bottom line, I don't think it's a problem, and I don't think it is going to be a problem in the future.
In the meantime, Dr. Smith says he's confident that whatever the political outcome in Venezuela, the troubled South American country's relationship with the CDB and the region will remain strong. Venezuela is a shareholder and contributor to the CDB.
Venezuela has been a very, very faithful member of the Caribbean Development Bank. If my memory serves me correctly, they were one of the early shareholders in CDB, and they have faithfully contributed to the resources of this institution, They still have funds here with CDB.
They continue to contribute?
Well, at the times when we go to our shareholders for funding, yes, Venezuela has always taken up their responsibility so that they are in good standing as far as CDB is concerned. And we expect that that will continue regardless of what unfolds in Venezuela.
However, he says he doesn't believe the Petrocaribe agreement is likely to continue. On the Petrocaribe, Caribbean countries were able to defer payment for oil from Venezuela for lengthy periods and at a very low interest rate. But that arrangement has largely stalled as oil production in Venezuela plummeted over the past 2 years.
I'm not sure that Petrocaribe has much of a future going forward, especially as the region starts to focus more on the development of renewables. The issue surrounding Petrojam is in part the consequence of Jamaica moving now to a situation where they're replacing heavy fuel oil with LNG, right? And that represents a big chunk of the production of the Petrojam refinery. So that refinery needs to be transformed, it needs to be modernized, otherwise it's not going to be feasible.
Moving on now, it's being described as a major sex trafficking operation. The Trinidad and Tobago police made a breakthrough in an ongoing investigation earlier this week when it moved in on several locations, arresting several men and rescuing 19 Venezuelan females. The underage women were found locked away at a popular Chinese restaurant along Aripita Avenue. CNC3's Mark Bassant has the details.
19 South American young ladies locked in rooms at Stir Fry King restaurant along Aripita Avenue in Port of Spain, as well as in homes in Circle Drive, West Moorings, and the Moncoco Road in Diego Martin, were rescued by police officers close to 2 o'clock this morning. 10 men of Asian descent were also detained during the exercise conducted by SORT, Counter-Trafficking Unit, the Child Protection Unit, and the Financial Intelligence Branch. Commissioner Gary Griffith described it as a significant breakthrough in an illicit world of sex and drugs.
We have been instrumental in what may very well be cracking a major ring in Trinidad and Tobago in the involvement of the illegal immigration of young ladies. It also involves prostitution and all other aspects of human trafficking.
Commissioner Griffith said most of these young women were held in captivity and possibly victims of a sex ring.
Most of them 15 and 16 years old that were actually held against their will. They were basically slaves. They were released, rescued by the Special Operation Response Team last night. As I said, 19 of them, most of them 15 and 16 years old, being used as prostitutes by certain individuals.
Director of the Counter-Trafficking Unit, Alana Wheeler, said they were working closely with the young women and asked anyone with information about women facing similar circumstances to reach out.
We are currently in the process of screening them with interpreters to determine whether they are victims of trafficking or not. As the Commissioner said, they are minors and there are also young, very young adult females. And we are asking the public and appealing to the public, please, if you identify any suspected young women, particularly foreign migrants who are in places that they ought not to be, please refer them to the relevant agencies.
ASP Lucas of the Financial Intelligence Branch said this was a lucrative business, that homeowners needed to be cognizant of the people interested in leasing or renting their properties.
There's a lot of money involved. As the Commissioner indicated, these young ladies have been brought into a ring of prostitution, and the evidence so far suggests that these ladies were placed in several places, several locations in Trinidad and Tobago, in properties that were leased from landowners. So this is a call to all the landowners as well and property owners to be mindful of the persons who you are leasing your property to, have some idea as to what is going to be taking place at your property.
When CNC3 visited Stir Fry King restaurant this morning, the place was shut tight. Police also conducted similar exercises in East Trinidad at a Chinese restaurant in Curepe. Mark Besant, CNC3.
Thanks for that, Mark. Joining us now to give us a quick update on the situation in Trinidad and Tobago is journalist Ian Wason. Ian, thanks so much for joining us here on the Weekend Business Report. Let's start with the latest on this specific case. What can you tell us?
Well, with this specific case, the Minister of National Security, during the weekly post-cabinet media briefing. He indicated that the girls who were rescued in the business place in Port of Spain, they have been taken in for questioning, and it's really to assist them, because remember, they are victims, so they are not treated like criminals. They are assisted by the Trinidad and Tobago government, just to ascertain how they got here and things like that. But because of the nature of the incident, not much information has been divulged.
Have any arrests or charges been laid against anyone?
There were a number of arrests, but I'm not sure of the amount. A lot of them were, in fact, they were foreign nationals, in fact. I don't think any local nationals have been involved just yet.
Are instances of forced prostitution and human trafficking common in Trinidad and Tobago?
It is common, but what it is, it's not as widely known. A lot of underground stuff at the lower level, people would hear, people would shoo and things like that, but it's not really out in the open. This could be the first big case, or the first big instance of human trafficking. There are a lot of different infomercials coming from the government talking about that, and looking for us to help us to look at signs, to observe signs and pick up signs of persons who may be involved. So it's there, we know it's there, but it's just putting our hands on it and actually catching persons. I think this could be the first big instance. There are a lot of instances where people have been missing. Some persons have been missing for a couple of years, haven't been found. So there are a lot of allegations about different reasons why people would have been missing. And of course, human trafficking, that conversation would have popped up in the past.
Just a few days ago, some Venezuelans staged a protest outside Parliament demanding better treatment from Trinidad's immigration department. Now, what's the general reaction in Trinidad to Venezuelans who are seeking refuge?
It's mixed. It's mixed. We have some Trinidadians saying, yes, we are in a position to help. Some are saying, no, we are barely in a position to help ourselves. And what has made things worse, a couple of weeks ago, or less than a couple of weeks ago, some fishermen in South Trinidad were kidnapped by Venezuelans. So a lot of people, you would understand why the feeling will be mixed. Some people say yes, some people say no, help them, don't help them, they are causing trouble, they are not causing trouble, so it's really mixed.
Thanks so much for updating us, Ian. We definitely will be staying on top of this story. Thanks again for joining us. Company news comes up next, then later, bringing your dead pet back to life. Well, kinda. We'll explain in the final segment of the show, so stick around to find out. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. Here's this week's company news.
iCreate's initial public offering IPO closed early after being oversubscribed in less than 48 hours. It was scheduled to close on February 14, but lead broker Sagicor Investments says there was a greater demand for shares than what the company had to offer. The company hoped to raise almost $70 million from going public. iCreate says it will use the money to expand its physical infrastructure in Kingston and Montego Bay, purchase additional equipment, computers and software to develop courses, implement new training courses, and expand regionally and internationally. Burrito Investments ended 2018 as the best performing stock on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. An excellent October to December quarter contributed to this as the company saw a 380% increase in net profits compared to the previous year. Net profits increased a whopping 379.7% compared to the similar period in the previous year. That's $180 million compared to the $38 million recorded in the previous year. The company managed to amass this significant gain despite the impact of the foreign currency translation losses, which totaled almost $180 million. Meanwhile, Corporate Investment says as the year progresses, they're looking forward to low interest rates and a strong equities market. Lasco Distributors Limited is reporting $621 million in net profit for the third quarter, which ended December 31, 2018. That's a 16% increase, which the company says was due largely to increased sales across the pharmaceutical and consumer lines. Lasco Distributors says its third quarter performance reflects a strong period-over-period that saw consecutive revenue growth, which closed at $13.3 billion, or nearly 9% more than the 9 months ending December 31, 2017. The company attributed its financial performance to success in key areas including distribution of liquid, powdered beverages, and distribution of new products to the pharmaceutical market. The company says it is also still pleased with the ongoing successful execution of its growth strategies, which has assisted in improvements to its bottom line.
Let's now take a look at how some of the major global stock markets ended the week. When we come back, more of the week's top stories from the BATV News Desk, so stay with us. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. $9.2 million. That's the separation package embattled Petrojam Human Resource Manager Yolande Ramarak received when she was forced to leave the scandal-hit state-run entity a few months ago. Jamila Maitland tells us more.
Parliament's Public Accounts Committee took an unusual format today after Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Sansia Bennett-Templer, refused to provide the settlement amount for Petrojam's former Human Resource Manager and the General Manager who resigned from the company following countless reports of mismanagement at the oil refinery. PAC members had to pause the meeting to have the sum disclosed to them in a private chamber. This came after more than half hour of back and forth about whether or not the settlement of the two former managers could be done in public. Mrs. Bennett-Templer said she was advised by the Attorney General not to discuss the matter publicly, but that advice was quickly challenged by PAC members, including government PAC member Everard Warmington.
The Parliament asks you a simple question. You do not refuse to answer Parliament. And we are not going in camera for that answer. I'm asking you a question. Was there a compensation settlement? Is yes or no? It is yes. I'm losing my patience. I'm on this committee since 1980. And I've never come across something like this. I have never witnessed this type of contempt and insult to members of this committee. I ask you a simple question. Don't tell me about legal advice because you are getting incorrect legal advice.
Former Petrojam Human Resource Manager Yolande Ramarak received $9.2 million in gross separation payment from Petrojam. The embattled Human Resource Manager was hired without the necessary qualifications, received a questionable $12.2 million compensation package, hired her sibling even though he was not qualified for the job, a clear breach in policy, and has had several instances of mismanagement at the oil refinery. PAC members questioned how a settlement could have been made when the matter was still being deliberated.
In setting the hearing dates, it's her lawyer being available and our legal counsel as well. What we realized that this thing was extending into 6 months and possibly even going longer. And then at the same time, we had a business to run that was not able to function. It was just too many conflicts taking place. And that was a big part of the decision in how we decided to terminate the hearing.
Parliamentarians from the opposition People's National Party took Prime Minister Andrew Holness to task during Tuesday's parliamentary sitting after they learnt about the $9.2 million separation package for Petrojam's former human resource manager, Yilan Ramarak. The Prime Minister, who tried defending this settlement, was criticized by opposition parliamentarians who claim Ms. Ramarak did not deserve so much money. More in this report.
A golden handshake. That's what opposition parliamentarians are calling the more than $9 million settlement package Petrojam's former human resource manager Yilan Ramarak received. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who now heads the energy ministry under which Petrojam falls, was tight-lipped about the details of the settlement. He said he was being guided by legal advice surrounding Ms. Ramarak's contract. However, opposition member of parliament Julian Robinson argued that the figure needs to be explained.
Why was there a non-disclosure agreement with this particular manager for HRD if the general manager has none, and as far as you know, no other manager in the entity has one? What is so special about this person, someone who came in without qualifications, salary bump up in 3 months, hire a brother, breach all kind of things as laid out here, and she's given a golden handshake to leave? $9 million? It's scandalous under your watch. This is not former Minister Wheatley, this is you.
Prime Minister Holness said the former HR manager was still a member of staff during the deliberations, while the former general manager Floyd Grindley was not. Mr. Holness said he signed off on the settlement after seeing the cost-benefit analysis from continuing deliberations. He said that amounted to some $25 million.
Just to have that process of reviewing the charges, $4 million. The legal charges to Petrojam was estimated at $1.5 million. Sundry costs for hosting and so forth. And then, of course, during the period of this process of determining the charges, you would still have to pay the employee in question.
Opposition spokesman on finance Mark Golding claimed otherwise.
Under your watch, a settlement was arrived with her and she was paid $9.2 million to leave. A total of $32 million she earned from her less than 2 years of employment. And you juxtapose that with her predecessor, who was dismissed on Christmas Eve, where no one has said she did anything wrong. She was more than qualified for the job, and she was summarily dismissed on Christmas Eve. No one was concerned about liabilities to the company for that. The juxtaposition just doesn't wash, Prime Minister. Doesn't wash.
And Prime Minister Andrew Holness officially broke ground on Wednesday in Coral Spring, Trelawney for the new $34 billion Jamaican dollar investment from Spanish hotel chain H10. Construction is already underway by the hotel chain to build some 1,000 new rooms. The hotel, which is expected to complete 500 rooms by the end of the year, will be called Ocean Coral Spring. Here's more.
Prime Minister Holness says the H10 development will bring jobs to Trelawney, which will facilitate the inclusive growth the administration seeks.
In a few months, we will have a new resort here of 1,000 rooms. But more importantly, we will have more than 1,000 workers. That means that we would have assisted more than 1,000 households in lifting themselves out of poverty. And that is a shared benefit of investments. That is what we mean when we say we believe in inclusive growth and prosperity.
The Prime Minister assured the Spanish investors that their investment in Jamaica is safe.
This government has created a fiscal environment that is certain. You know, when you make your investments here, you are not at risk of unexpected and unplanned taxes. You can be certain that you have a macroeconomic environment that is stable.
When we come back, the business of dog cloning in South Korea. More on that after the break. the attachment to their pet is too strong to let go of, even after they're dead. In South Korea, though, one clinic is fulfilling the dreams of pet owners who want to keep their best friend alive forever. Here's more.
You can order 3, a 6-pack, or even 10 of your departed pet. In South Korea, at least, death is no longer the end. For bereaved owners like Kevin Kinji, the copied canines are almost as good as the original. His Pekingese puppy is just a few weeks old. He says it's his old dog reborn.
15 years old. You see the marks? I think it's the same dog. In my mind, I feel like it's the same dog.
One more success for Seoul's SOAM Biotech Research Foundation. Bioengineers here have cloned more than 1,000 dogs for customers all over the world.
A lot of people know that it might not be the exact same dog. Some people think it's the puppies that the original dog never had, or some of the other people think that it's an identical twin.
South Korean scientists created the world's first clone dog in 2005. Today, the procedure has become routine and very lucrative. The clinic charges 88,000 euros per puppy, implanted and born by a surrogate mother. It's not just private pet owners showing interest. The security industry sees a way to replicate their best sniffer dogs. With the help of cloning, they can fast-track their breeding and training process.
At this young age, dogs have an average 30% success rate. But this clone dog has an 80% success rate.
Critics question the ethics of cloning, which they say turns living beings into reproductive machines. For wealthy owners, it's a small price to bring their beloved pets back to life.
And that's our show for this week. On behalf of the entire Weekend Business Report team, I'm Keneal. See you next time.